he like kind of cast everybody into these roles. Like he's the conflicted, straightforward, honest lead. Kaity is this protected, angel who has to be sheltered from all of this stuff. And Gabi is this immoral wrench. Hi everyone, I'm Julie, she's Kelly, and we're here to find love. We're in Bachelor Season 27, Episode 11, the finale. And we're back again this week and every week to recap Zach's season. For those of you who don't know us, we're two dating coaches who analyze the relationship psychology and dating themes in reality TV shows, especially The Bachelor. So if you're into this sort of stuff, hit the subscribe button to follow along and join the conversation. Make sure you stay until the end of the video. We have some really exciting updates. What's to come next? We're here to find love now that the season's over. So stick around.
Okay, so this season finale, oh boy, it was a doozy. A lot was going on. It was very emotional, honestly. I was like pretty shocked watching all of the events that unfolded. Here's an overview of what happened. It was a pretty normal final week of the season. Zach introduced Gabi and Kaity, his two frontrunners, to his family. Those dates both went perfectly normal and well. They had their each individual last date together before the proposal. Gabi was very emotional and anxious throughout it. She seemed to have an intuitive gut instinct that she wasn't going to get picked, and she was right. At the end, at the proposal, Zach broke up with her on the proposal stage. She had a devastating kind of reaction as she was getting in her limo and getting driven off. It was really just so heartbreaking to watch her kind of have this this insecurity explosion come out of her, but also like this sense of knowing, like she knew it was going to happen. So it was very, very intense to watch. We'll get into it. Zach and Kaity get engaged. He proposes. Kaity says yes. And then we have our whole after the final rose kind of live viewing thing going on. We get to see Ariel talk. We get to see Gabi and Zach reunite for the first time since that breakup. And then we get to see Zach and Kaity in their engaged bliss. So let's just kind of dive right into this. There's so much to talk about. Let's start with Ariel because, damn, she really came and put Zach in his place.
Deservedly so, because this was the first time that she was actually getting to have a conversation with him about something that was so long overdue. Her finding out with the rest of America that she wasn't privy to some really big conversations Zach was having with the final woman left at that point of time was really hurtful. So I'm glad that she was able to recontinue that conversation, and she was so articulate about the way that he took away like her agency to really make the decision that was best for her. She worked off of very limited information about the entire thing of Zach, and I felt like she was expressing a lot of that disappointment that she needed to get off of her plate so that she really could finally move on from this situation, because it was like a loose end that was still there even after he was engaged.
Totally. I think that she did such a beautiful job kind of explaining to Zach where he really misstepped and the mistakes that he made and how they impacted her, while also being very graceful, compassionate, and not overly like bludgeoning him with a bat. Like she was just like, you really messed up in these ways. Here's the impact, and I want you to learn from this, and that's it. I'm gonna release it. Like that's all I'm going to put into this. This is, how you messed up, and I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna move in peace. And I really loved that. And you're right, I really loved that she talked about the piece about agency and how they should have been having these conversations as a couple, these conversations about intimacy and the role of it within the context of Fantasy Suites Week. These are conversations that couples in theory should get to have together, right? They should be able to talk about the role of sex, especially in the context of this weird scenario where there's multiple people. Ariel describes it as an open relationship, which I love that she just like openly said that is what it is, right? There are multiple women involved. And so Zach, this is what we talked about last week, Zach kind of just made this executive decision of like, this is what the women want. I know women want this, and that's why I'm going to do it this way. And like he made this assumption about all of them. And I think Ariel really said it well. It's like, you needed to just talk to us about what we wanted as opposed to just making that decision on our behalves. I don't think that the decision of whether or not to have sex in any given night is a mutual decision. Like, I do think that Zach, if he just doesn't want to have sex that night, he doesn't want to have sex that night, he doesn't really, that isn't a conversation that necessarily needs to happen as much as it is, like, if he has that boundary, he has that boundary. But I think his overall approach to Fantasy Suites Week, that is something that he ostensibly was doing to help all the women, but he made that decision without really actually asking them what they wanted. And I think that's where the misstep was. And I'm glad that Ariel pointed that out to him, because I think he was just like really in his own head of like, this is what's going to minimize drama, and I'm going to just, take a stab at it without actually interfacing with each of these girls. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she pointed it out to him, and I think that when Zach made that decision to, avoid all of that drama, ostensibly he was doing it because he wanted to avoid the tears, the drama, and the difficulty of navigating those really hard conversations. But then they had it on after the final rose, and it was fine. It wasn't like Ariel was like this scorned woman that was full of wrath. She was just disappointed that she didn't get the opportunity to express herself in that moment. Now what Zach has done is that he's created this distance, this time for her to be on her own to process it, and not to process it with him. Like, she processed it with America. She processed it by herself privately, and that is a really hard experience. It just kind of goes to show that, Zach was trying to keep his season easy and no drama, and then he did exactly the opposite. Just like he did for Sex Week, she made a very astute observation. He tried not to make it about sex, but by doing that, he made it completely about sex. He pointed out the elephant in the room, and then he made it a part of all of their dynamics in a way that I don't think any lead has ever done before. That just speaks to like his fear of being able to communicate those things. It was just very interesting how he was trying so hard not to lean into it, and that was exactly what he did. Now his season will always kind of be known as that person that did this thing to these women. It was ridiculous. I can't believe what Zach did. I'm just thinking, are you that afraid of a woman crying? Or are you that afraid of having a difficult conversation with someone that you don't even... It's like he eliminated any possibility for any kind of difficulty, and by doing that, he made things extra hard. He accidentally cranked it on hard mode. I don't know. I just think in his conversation with Ariel, it wasn't scary. It wasn't that intense. So why didn't he just have it with her instead of keeping her in the dark? Does he not think he's being filmed? Does he forget that he's on a TV show?
I think that he was doing the classic thing that we've been talking about this whole season. I feel like he was just trying to avoid any type of conflict. And in his head, he was like, if I just make this executive decision and remove this thing that people tend to have a lot of feelings around, which is sex, then I can avoid tough conversations that involve a lot of feelings. That was kind of what he was trying to do. And of course, that's not how it works, right? You might think that if you just avoid the hard thing, then you will not have conflict. I think people think this all the time, that if we avoid the hard thing, then, we can just, we can just have all the good stuff and not have any of the drama, the tension, the hard emotions. But that's rarely ever how it really works, right? The truth is you can't avoid those hard conversations. You really just can't do it. And Zach was forced to have them against his will, and in fact they were even worse and made even harder by the fact that he tried to avoid. And I think that's usually the case of how it happens. We all, of course, want to minimize conflict in our relationships, of course. Nobody likes fighting, no one likes arguing, no one likes that. We all try to minimize that, but the way to minimize fighting is not to avoid things and avoid interactions or activities or topics that you think are going to be hard, because then you're just avoiding a hard thing that is going to have to come up eventually, right? The way to minimize conflict is by being able to move through those conversations skillfully, right? It's not about avoiding the hard thing. It's about being able to talk about it openly, honestly, with care, consideration, and level-headedness. And That's what Ariel was able to do. And I think Zach underestimated all of these women and how much they would have been able to very maturely move through these conversations about sex. Even Kaity, and this is what we talked about last week, she was able to really handle the fact that Zach had had sex with Gabi with such grace. Yeah, it was like a hard date, but like she handled it so well. And I think Zach really underestimated all of these women. And I'm glad Ariel pointed this out after the final rose. He needs to just stop trying to control everything, control everyone's reactions, control what happens, and just actually be real with these people and treat them like humans who are capable of moving through these conversations. You know?
Absolutely. And it's also the window of tolerance that he's not thinking about with conflict, because conflict is uncomfortable, even if you're amazing at communication, even if you know how to regulate your emotions and you can name your emotions and you have an ability to like really consider your partner the way that they deserve to be, you know, treated in this really difficult moment. Even if you're amazing at that, you're still going to be, your heart might be beating really fast. Your palms might be sweating. You might be thinking, how much do I share? How much do I say? But that doesn't matter. Like, you don't need to be perfect in that moment. You just have to care, and you need to bring it up, because what happens is if that's not dealt with, then the conversation, it like accumulates, it builds until you like reach this level of like explosion of, I'm really upset. There's all of these things that have been bothering me. It's kind of like, it's a concept called like kitchen sinking. You just bring up all of these past grievances into this one conversation and you push it forward. That's really hard to parse through, because now, you know, with all of that, there's no listening. There hasn't been a lot of consideration applied in these situations. So fight is kind of getting lost in the sauce a little bit.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. It's just, if Zach was able to really kind of hold true to the ability of like, this is going to suck. I'm not going to be great at this. I might be stuttering a lot, but I care for these women and I want to make sure that we can talk about these things that are deeply impacting me, deeply impacting them. It would have been a much different conversation. And I just think that his inability to be uncomfortable made things extra uncomfortable later on, and it made things worse.
Right. I think that's so true. It's kind of like if in Fantasy Suites Week, instead of making this blanket sex ban to try to avoid any opportunity for someone to have a bad feeling, he could have just treated each connection as an individual situation where he's going to figure out like what he wants to do with each woman. That would have been something that would have allowed him to really connect with each woman on a deeper level, because he is having a two-way conversation with them and understanding what they actually want and need. And then in each date, like if there is that tension or someone brings up that they are uncomfortable with him having sex with other women, if someone did bring that up, then he just needed to have faith that he could move through that conversation and be able to manage and respond thoughtfully to those emotions. I think he didn't have faith in the fact that him and those women would be able to move through those conversations, and that's why he made that blanket sex ban. He didn't believe in his ability and anyone's ability in any of these relationships' ability to handle that conflict. And he thought he could, well, then I'll just avoid any chance for conflict. And it's like, no, you just need to be able to handle the conflict. And that's the thing that you failed to do. And that's the thing that really hurt all of these women, because they were then forced to deal with it with all of your like mess ups, right? They were forced to deal with it in a way that was much more painful. Coming back to Ariel though, I just have so much appreciation for the way that she really pointed this out to him. I love that she advocated for herself and her agency and her ability to make decisions for herself.
She didn't cater to Zach, which I think she had kind of done the entire season, of kind of soothing him and being, it's okay what you thought, it's okay, you know, you're so honest, you're so straightforward. There wasn't that gratitude, because it wasn't true. All of those things that she thought he actually wasn't in the moment when he needed to be, when it really mattered, when it affected her. And she brought up his side of the street. It's a little bit messy, take care of it. These are some things that you did, and this is how I feel about it. That's what it is. She didn't sugarcoat her reaction to it. And, you know, she was able to thank him, but she did it in a very even way, where she also, like, stood up for herself. And it wasn't in a jilted ex way. It was in a, you know, you should think about this now that your season is done. It is a growth opportunity for Zach to look back on his season and to see how he actually has been reacting and how he has been moving. But I don't know if he's really growing from it. So I hope the conversation of Ariel kind of lays the groundwork for him to examine that within himself of, why didn't I tell her these things?
Yeah, absolutely. I really do hope that it's a learning for Zach to really think about not just his point of view and what he thinks is the right thing to do, and more about how can I, in my relationship with Kaity, my future wife, ostensibly, how can I make sure that I'm actually including Kaity in my thought processes instead of making blanket decisions, assuming what she wants. And so hopefully that conversation with Ariel and all of these conversations that are happening around these dynamics, that's my only hope. I just want him to actually learn from this. It's hard to know because he got the happy ending, so it's hard to know whether he's gonna learn from his mistakes, but hopefully.
Yeah, I'm so happy that we had someone like Ariel on our TV, and I really want her to be back on the beach. Do you guys think that she'll be on Paradise? Who do you think will be a really good match for her? Let us know in the comments down below.
Ooh, juicy.
So the next is really, I think, the most important part of the entire episode, which was Gabi and Zach's interaction. And it starts off with, Gabi is in a rough place. She is feeling insecure. She is not sure about her connection with Zach. She feels a certain way because of the prior week. She speaks to Zach about her insecurities. He reassures her that everything's okay, that he has found some love within her. She meets his parents, and then they show up at the beach, and we know that he didn't choose her. It was tough to see because Zach did something that I think older seasons had done, which was he made her prepare for it. She dressed up. She walked down to him. He had a whole speech prepared, and she knew it wasn't her.
I have a gut feeling, and I think if it were me, I'd know it was me.
And she had felt that for many weeks now. And it's really tough because when she was feeling that feeling, she has like a fight inside her head, which is, am I feeling this way because I've traditionally been insecure, I've traditionally been second best, and I'm bringing that into the relationship? Or is this worth the risk, and all of this is in my head, and it really is me at the very end? So she's battling that, and Zach is validating the optimistic perspective, which is, I find a lot of hope and optimism and love in our connection, and I want you to stay. I want you to stay really bad. I think that Gabi had a really rough go of it because she really genuinely believed that it wasn't her at the end, and Zach wouldn't have put her through the paces. He would have said something to her much sooner. So then Gabi got out of the van, and when she got out of the van to go up to the final rows, she noticed a muddy spot, and she said a very self-aware thing, which was don't let Kaity walk on that. And it's because she knew, she had a feeling the entire time that it wasn't going to be her. And it's heartbreaking because she believes Zach to be this person that all of the girls kept celebrating and praising. You're so honest, you're so straightforward, you're just so about love, you're so about the relationship. But then he's doing this thing to her at the same time, and she's battling so many of her insecurities, and she's reconciling these two different perspectives as who she wants Zach to be, which is a person that would take care of her despite the fact that she's not going to be his final pick, and this person that she hopes that, he actually chooses her. She's battling between these two different forces, and she's hoping that it's the latter because of what Zach's telling her. But she knew it, and it wasn't I think that's something I was thinking was, just because she was insecure didn't make it a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's not like she was so insecure and that drove Zach away from her. I think that she knew fairly early on that it was going to be Kaity, and it was validated last week when they were intimate, and he said, I have to share it with people because if it was theoretically her, it would stay a secret between them because it's their private relationship. Right. But because it wasn't, it got turned into content. It got turned into a narrative. She became this person that was the sacrificial lamb so that Zach could have the love story of Kaity. Katie's love story would be unprotected. It wouldn't be tainted. It wouldn't have any of the stuff that, any of the mess that Gabi is dealing with. So it was hard when Zach gave the speech and she was just don't say anything else because I know what you're trying to say. And then he kept going because he was being a good bachelor, right? He was being that guy that was doing what the producers wanted, which was breaking up with her on TV in front of everybody to see without any advance notice to her. And she was hoping he wouldn't be that guy. That's the disappointing thing, to see that like all of the illusions that she had about him just kind of shattered when she realized like, oh my God, you are doing it to me. I am just like part of this show now. Like, you put me into the show. It wasn't actually like you and me, and it wasn't this relationship that was separate from that, like this really beautiful connection. She really just became the runner-up versus like Gabi.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah, that was a really good play-by-play of why that scene was so devastating. And you know, I get that this is how the show is structured. Someone gets dumped on the proposal stage. Like, that's how it happens in every season. I do kind of think that, you know, some leads do choose to not do that. Some leads will end things with the runner-up before they have to, like, get dressed up and go to the proposal stage. Some leads do that, and I really think it's appropriate, honestly, to do that, especially with Gabi. She was already showing so much, like, she was really communicating so much distress to Zach in the days leading up to the proposal, that I think it would have been really kind of him to make that decision sooner than he did. I know that he wanted to maximize his time with each person to make sure he was making the right decision, but it really did feel like taking all of the possible time he could with each woman. Like, that was very focused on him and his experience, right? It was very focused on him being able to make sure he feels like he made the right decision. And it wasn't enough thinking about how taking every single moment he could would impact Gabi. And clearly it impacted her so much. She seemed, after the final rose, she seems like she's still devastated about everything. She seems like she's still really heartbroken about it all. And so usually I'm a proponent of the leads being able to use every moment that they can to think about it and to, like, experience the relationship with each person before they make the choice. Usually I am. Like, I feel like I get why that feels necessary. I do think that in this case, he should have known Gabi well enough to know how much this was affecting her and how negatively this would impact her if he did dump her on the proposal stage, which she did end up doing. And the fact that even after she said, stop talking, like, I get what you're saying, like, don't keep, like, I don't want to hear it. The fact that he kept talking and kept, like, word vomiting it out.
I don't have to say it.
As much as I've been falling in love with you.
I don't want to hear it.
Gabi, I'm sorry. You deserve a man that picks you first every day. And I'm sorry.
Can you stop?
He's not talking to make her feel better. He's not talking to, like, make sure she's okay. He's talking to make himself feel better. He's talking so that, oh, well, hopefully if I just say enough, like, we can end on a beautiful moment instead of ending on this painful moment. And I should just keep talking. It was very self-centered. It was very, Bert used this word, solipsistic. Like, it was so much, like, focused on his own experience. The fact that he just kept going, even when they were walking to the car, he was like, I'll always have a piece of you, a piece of my heart will always be with you. It's like, why are you saying that? Like, what do you think, how do you think she's going to feel about that? Why would that make her feel better? You're not actually thinking about it. You're just saying words that you think will make you look like a good guy, that you think will help make this moment feel a little less bad for you, right? And so it just felt like a very Zach breakup, as in, like, it was classic Zach, just really thinking about himself. And, oh my God, it feels so bad to see her crying so much. What do I do to make her stop crying? I should just figure out how to make her stop crying so that way I feel better in this moment. It wasn't actually about making Gabi feel better. And so I just really It was sad to see. I was so sad about it. And then for Gabi to get in that car and drive off, and like she kind of spiraled into her, like her wounds ripped open in that car. Like hearing her say, I am unlovable. Clearly I'm unlovable because why does this keep happening? Clearly, something is wrong with me. Something is wrong with me. Like you can't say this. If I wasn't unlovable, I wouldn't be in this position. Like hearing her say all of that, that was like,
right.
To me, it was sad because it was like, sometimes like we can talk about like, oh yeah, I'm like really insecure. I get worried about these things. And you kind of talk about it like kind of observing the insecurity, but she was in it. Like she was fully in it. And she was it was like a moment where like the demons that she probably hears those voices in the back of her head all the time, which is the saddest part of it, right? Those voices are probably always playing in the back of her head, and in this moment they kind of like took over her body, took over her self, and it was so sad to see. And I appreciated her realness and her being vulnerable, but this was a deeper pain than I think we typically see on this show.
And it's like a lot of it was Zach knew this about Gabi as well, because she had spoken about her insecurities quite openly to him.
Yeah.
And as a partner of hers, even when he was breaking up with her, that care should have continued to extended. He should have known that Gabi would have been in a really bad place if he did go through the whole show production of it, of, taking her to the proposal stage and breaking up with her there. He didn't protect her in that moment. And that's a really hard thing that Gabi was wrestling with, was that she had a gut feeling and she was hoping, maybe this is because I'm insecure. Maybe this is why I feel so dysregulated and my nervous system is really activating, because I have had all of these past experiences, but this isn't true. I can trust this person for what he's telling me. So then she ignored her intuition. She denied her real feelings about it. And she, for lack of a better word, betrayed herself.
God, it's so sad.
Right? It's so sad because she knew that it wasn't going to be her, and she believed Zach. Zach validated her. Zach told her, I want you to meet my parents. I am falling in love with you. Or he used the love word. I don't know the exact words he used, but it was enough for her to stay. And it was enough for her to put all of that stuff aside and keep battling with it every single moment. Yeah. I honestly did feel that Zach made his choice when he decided to tell Kaity that he was also intimate with Gabi. He may have wanted the time, he would have wanted the certainty, but you have to make a decision. It wasn't even fair for him to tell Gabi, I didn't know until the night before this engagement, because now Kaity is hearing that conversation. Kaity hears that he didn't know that he was going to be engaged to her until 12 hours before he got on the stage. That means when he was picking out the engagement rings, it could have been for Kaity or Gabi. It's that 50-50. That's what Zach tried to tell Gabi to comfort her, but then he does that by like pushing down Kaity. All to make himself be like, I'm the good guy, I'm the nice guy, I'm the honest guy, I'm being straightforward, I'm being forthcoming about this situation. He was in an act of self-preservation of his image and his identity and how he was wanting to come across. So yeah, like gut feelings, they're a very powerful thing. It's basically like we're subconsciously observing all of these things happening around us in real time, and our body starts to react before our mind can even catch up. Yeah. That's what a gut feeling basically is. So she was noticing all of these little tells that maybe I'm not the person at the end. Maybe I'm not the person that Zach is really going to end up with, but am I insecure? Am I dealing with stuff with my ex? Like all of these other thoughts come crashing down. So yeah, like it was tough seeing her drive off and just knowing that she was just kind of like ripping herself to shreds. And then you cut to Zach, and Zach is just feeling guilty about making her feel that way. But he had a responsibility in that dynamic, and he could have totally changed that conversation for her. I know you have these fears, and unfortunately right now in this relationship, there's a kernel of truth to it. You actually aren't the person. It's not like you're being second best, but I'm in this show. You're not the person. And I feel awful about it. I don't want to hurt you anymore. And I have to let you go. He didn't do that because he didn't want to have that conversation until it was absolutely necessary. And that's almost even worse.
Yeah, you're right. It's the same thing. It's like avoiding the hard conversation until you have to do it and it's worse. And it's like, gosh, Zach, oh man. One thing that I will also say though is I think love is always, this is going to sound so tacky, I do think that love is always to some extent a risk, right? I think that loving someone, trusting someone, hoping for something, wanting something, it's a risk. It's always a risk. Anytime that you are with someone and willing to kind of love them, fall in love with them, feel something strongly for them, that's a risk because you could end up getting hurt if they don't feel the same way, if they decide that they want something else, if they make actions that hurt you. Making the choice to love someone and to want something with someone, it's risky. And I think that when people talk about like being afraid of love and being afraid of falling in love, I'm like, I mean, that makes sense. It's hella scary. It's like one of the deepest pains we feel is like, when that love is heartbreak, when that love is taken from us, right? It's one of the deepest pains that people experience. And so I get why it is as scary as it is. And I think that in some way, Gabi, like she kind of said this, like she was like, I have this gut feeling that it's not me, and yet I'm still gonna go on to that stage because just in case I have to see Zach is worth it. To me, this relationship is worth it.
I want this so badly that it's worth putting myself out there, because what if it is me?
Gabi seemed to even recognize that she was taking a risk, and probably not a good risk, like probably a risk that she was going to lose on. She seemed to know that when she went up to the stage, and she still consciously made the choice to do it, which in some way, even though there was like an intuitive feeling that she ignored, I also want to like honor and celebrate that choice to like chase something that matters to you. She kind of made the risk knowing that she could get hurt, and in some ways that's really beautiful too. It's really beautiful to want to just decide like, I know I'm probably gonna get hurt by doing this, but I want it enough that I'll just allow myself to get hurt and do it. In some ways that is something to applaud. I know that I have definitely historically not taken those opportunities because sometimes it's just too scary. I'm like, I know I'm going to get so hurt, so I should just peace out. Like, so, this doesn't work out in my favor. It's going to hurt too much. I gotta just go. And so I know that I think a lot of people can probably relate to that, where they have been in situations like that where they could take the risk, but it's too much and they would rather just peace out than possibly deal with that pain. And so in some ways I'm like upset with Zach for not protecting Gabi more. I'm sad that Gabi kind of pushed down her intuition, and also I think there is still something to kind of celebrate about the fact that Gabi was willing to take that risk for something that she thought was worth it. I think it's just about, if you're going to take a risk like that, there just needs to be acceptance for the pain that you are gonna deal with if it's gonna come. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes like it's okay to accept pain because we just care enough. We just want it enough. And as long as you're able to deal with that pain, I think it's okay. The problem is that Gabi really went in and spiraled really hard. So part of me is like, you shouldn't have taken the risk. Why did you do it? You should have stayed in your shell. So part of me is like,
I know.
So yeah, it's like a lot of different things. I have like a lot of different feelings about it, but I do think there is something to applaud there.
That's such a great point, and I'm so glad that you brought up the risk of vulnerability that Gabi made. And it's a little bit surprising that she wasn't the Bachelorette, honestly, because I think her love story is just as compelling as Charity's. Yeah. Charity, I mean, I'm so excited to see her. I also feel like Gabi had this really great narrative of what it is like to love in a relationship completely, because the nature of The Bachelor, it is by its nature temporary, it's fleeting, it's ephemeral, it's something that lasts in a moment and it could be taken from you at any time. Gabi made this courageous leap to want it still, despite. She still reached for it. She still put herself on the line because she could admit to herself, I want love that much. And I don't want love. I want love from Zach in particular. Where the caution could have come in was, is this a person that is going to consider me no matter what? I do think a lot of people, we all have a responsibility in a relationship to make sure that we're caretaking for our partner in the ways that they need the most. Gabi really needed someone to look out for this insecurity that she had, and they needed to tend to it. It's just really, really difficult because, like, I do think it's awesome to take that risk, but it's taking it with that right person. And the right person is kind of measured by, like, how much do they care for my emotions despite all of these conditions. Even if we don't end up together, even if this is just for a summer, this is just for a show, how much can they still look out for me in the ways that matter the most based on all of these things that I volunteered about myself? Gabi mentioned on After the Final Rose that she talked to Zach about a lot of things that really mattered to her mental health, her insecurities, her going to therapy. So he was keenly aware of a lot of the things that she was dealing with. He didn't take all of those into the conversation with Gabi. I think that he did try his best in that moment, but Gabi was more vulnerable than he was the entire time. And she really, it takes two people to be in a relationship. If Zach was a partner for her, he would have stepped up in a different way. He clearly wasn't, which is why he didn't. But it's just painful.
It's like you always say, right? It's like you need to be able to care for someone even if they're not going to be your partner, right? It's like, yeah, Gabi wasn't his person at the end of the day, but he still could have shown more care for her than I think he really did ultimately. So what did you all think about how Gabi and Zach's relationship ended in those final days? We're going to get into everything that we found out in the After the Final Rose in a second here, but I mean, what did you think about the risk that Gabi took and how she was making that decision to trust her intuition versus to take that risk? And how do you think that Zach handled her vulnerability? Let us know down below. And, how would you have approached this situation if you were Gabi or Zach? Let's talk about the After the Final Rose, because Gabi's segment there was really just heart-wrenching. So Gabi comes out. First of all, she is dressed to kill, like hot diggity damn. She really, I was like, whoa. But man, so what Gabi reveals in this After the Final Rose is really key and a really interesting piece of this whole Fantasy Suites part of it, which was she talks about the fact that she didn't actually realize that Zach was telling everyone that they had sex, which I thought was so, I didn't know that she didn't know. I thought that my interpretation of the Fantasy Suites episode was that she was aware of, like, after he came to her after the Fantasy Suites and said, like, I don't want to have this secret, I want to be honest. My thought was that she understood that he was gonna talk to everyone about it, but apparently that wasn't the case. I think based on the way she explained it, maybe she thought that he was gonna talk to Kaity privately in the Fantasy Suite and, like, talk to her about what happened with Gabi, but maybe, like, she didn't know that he was gonna just, like, blatantly say to the camera, me and Gabi had sex, and then just continue to talk about it this whole time. And when I actually went back and I re-listened to that conversation that Gabi and Zach had afterwards, where Zach was like, I don't want to keep secrets, and when I was re-listening to it, I realized that Zach was saying in the moment interviews that he was, me and Gabi had sex and I'm going to tell everyone about it. Like, he was saying that, but in the actual conversation with Gabi, actually, he was, like, a little bit more vague about it. He was more like, oh, I don't want to have secrets. I don't want to base a relationship on a secret. I want to be more open and I want to make sure, like, the other women know. But he didn't quite exactly say, like, I'm going to talk about us having sex on camera. He didn't, like, quite exactly say that. And so Gabi's reaction, like she was saying, like, oh, I feel betrayed because like things that are supposed to be between us are not going to be between us anymore. But she didn't ever actually say like, oh, and we had sex. Like she never said that on camera. Like she never actually verbally said that. And we had just assumed that she knew that. And I don't think she actually did. And so that is really devastating to learn about. Just like that means she learned about it at the same time we learned about it, that he was just telling everyone about their sexual encounter.
Oh, I think out of a lot of the past seasons, Gabi, her vulnerability just feels so like apparent. It's kind of like what you said. She's a deeply insecure person, and a lot of her insecurities are being validated on the show. And then to have her love story with Zach, which felt unique, which felt personal, which felt special to her, sacred to her, even outside of the show, just see it being elements of it just being taken and used in TV, used in the promotions, used as drama. I can't imagine the betrayal that she felt when like the trailer came out and, you know, Zach was like, I had sex and I feel like it was robbed this moment. She just realized, oh my God,
he's gonna talk about it.
He's talking about it and he didn't talk to me about it. It's at odds with this persona of like, I'm a straightforward, I'm an honest person. I'm this person that is going to tell you what it is no matter what. That's so confusing because he is not presenting himself like that. I don't know, like I think the show kept trying to spin him as like this happy story, as him being this mature person, and he really like just showed his age yet again. He felt like a 26-year-old on TV to me. That's exactly how I'd imagine a guy like that to react. Good intentioned, but he went about it absolutely the wrong way.
Yeah, you're so right. It was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that he wasn't crystal clear to her that like, I am going to tell people that we are having sex. And the fact that he had behind closed doors made a promise to her not to do that. She reveals this in After the Final Rose that he directly, they talked about it in the fantasy suite when cameras were off, that they were not going to talk about this on camera. And when you listen, actually, she kept her promise. She didn't actually talk about it all the way through to the very end. And
she thought it was sacred.
She thought it was sacred. And even though they did have these conversations about it where they knew what they were talking about, she didn't actually ever say it to the camera about what happened. She talked about, oh, I feel like I have a scarlet letter. She said, like, do you feel like what you did with me was that you regretted that? She did say all of those things, but she didn't directly, I think maybe she thought that they were talking about it in this roundabout way that could be, you know, kept vague. I think that was like the nature of it that she was thinking. Like even when Kaity at that one rose ceremony said to her, I know you were the only one, when she said it, it was like they were having like a side conversation, whispering. Their mics happened to still be on them, but I don't think they realized that conversation was getting filmed. So I think Gabi really thought that at least like if Kaity knew that they had sex, fine, but I don't think Gabi knew that everyone knew.
It just shows like he was able to only be that person, but for one woman only, which was Kaity.
Yes, absolutely. He was only willing to be that person for one person. Like he was going to be a good guy, but only for his future wife, and that's it. And that sucks. Like that's a really shitty way to be.
If that's not you, then you are going to be like deal with it on your own, basically. Yeah. That's how he tended to that. And I get it. Like maybe he can't always be so considerate to every single person, but why not try? Why not just put in that effort anyways? Why do you have to shut yourself off like that? I don't know, like it just felt like to me, it was so apparent a lot of his emotional missteps and the hurt that he kind of, you know, wreaked on these, like the hurt that he kind of like imposed on these girls.
Yeah. Like it seems like there was a true swerve in what was first said behind closed doors when he said it would be just between them to what then started to happen on camera where they started to talk about it or maybe like beat around the bush about it. But it seems like Gabi still didn't understand until she watched it back that he was directly and openly talking about the two of them having sex. And so I really think that is something that, you know, you gotta be really sensitive about, and Zach just really failed to be sensitive about that. Now, granted, like, there's really nothing wrong with the fact that Gabi and Zach had sex. There's nothing to actually be ashamed about. It's just the violation of privacy. It's the violation of trust. It's the fact that they talked about not talking about it, and then Zach completely went back on his word. Not only did he go back on his word, he like did it in a way that like wasn't clear to her until the very end watching it back. And so it was like multiple violations. It was like multiple like trust breaks over and over and over, like seemed to be happening. And I'm shocked that this misunderstanding could have even happened. Like it just seems like something that Zach should have been really attentive to getting right, to make sure that she knows. Like, we're on a television show and I'm about to talk about your sex life. You got to be so crystal clear with someone before you do that and make sure that it's okay for them. Because even though, I mean, like, the truth is I just don't think it actually matters that we know that they had sex. I don't actually think that matters. But if it matters to Gabi, then it matters. Like, exactly. That's the thing. It really is okay. There's no reason for them to have to be ashamed about that. You know, whatever. They were just two people dating and having an intimate evening together. It like literally doesn't matter. But it mattered to Gabi. And so Zach should have really been sure and really been careful to make sure that there was a clear understanding about the fact that they were about to go talk about this. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit like disturbed, honestly, by Zach's like wishy-washiness, and just it's like he has this misunderstanding about what it really means to be honest. It's like he thinks that, oh, well, I intended to, like, you know, just come clean and not keep secrets, and that's what being honest is. And it's like, the girl didn't even understand what you meant. Like, so this isn't communication. This isn't honesty. Just because you said words doesn't mean that you've done your part, because she didn't even understand what you were saying. She didn't understand what you meant, and to the very end, she didn't understand what was happening till the very end. And so, like, that isn't communication. That's you just talking and just being like, okay, check, I did my part. That's not enough. And so I'm just so sad that Gabi kind of has gone through this. I'm just so sad that she dealt with having to learn about this on national television at the same time as America. I'm grossed out by Zach's behavior. I'm just so grossed out by it.
And to his credit, I know that he is a pawn in production. We always have to bring up production and how heavy-handed it is.
Right.
But that doesn't excuse a lot of his accountability in this situation. And because he wasn't being crystal clear to Gabi about what happened, production slut-shamed her, basically. They used a clip of her saying, you know, we'll see about that when we get to the fantasy suites about us having sex, and that it brought up this issue of consent. Like, did she seduce Zach? Did she do all of these things to Zach? Did she violate his boundary when which was something that we talked about last week because it was so gray. And it turns out it was totally consensual. What he regretted was that he wasn't able to be the upstanding, honest man that he wanted to be, but only for one person, and that was Kaity. Kaity was owed the honesty, she was owed the truth, the transparency, the straightforwardness, and everything else was going to be obfuscated because they didn't need to know the details, because it was him and his relationship with Kaity that was the main driving narrative, which I don't agree with. I feel like in this relationship, he was in a polyamorous relationship, and what makes polyamory succeed is the ability to be extremely transparent and very communicative about all of the things happening on all of these other relationships so that your partner feels safe. But yeah, I just felt like it was very murky. He tried to replicate, I think, an old winning formula on previous seasons that made it all about love. And it was really all about Zach's fantasy of love. Because real love is about consideration, and it's about unconditionality of how you take care of someone. He retracted that as soon as he realized Gabi was not going to be his person. It's not like he did it consciously, but he did it by taking away her decision-making and her consent. We have sex, it's private, but it's not private to Kaity because Kaity is the person that deserves it. So, like, I'm going to take that off from this dynamic. I'm going to tell Kaity, but I'm not going to tell you because those conversations are too hard to have. And I'm putting all of my energy and self-awareness and my ability to handle things into this one person and this one person only.
Right.
That's not fair because of how he presented himself. He presented himself to not be that kind of guy and to be the person that was not going to lead anyone on. And he did just that to maybe, I would say, Gabi and Kat, the Bahamas date that he had, they felt like the girls that had the most insecurities in terms of the way that they really go into it and how their inner voice dominates a lot of their thoughts and the way that they perceive themselves. I really felt it with the both of them. And he just didn't do a lot for them when he like let them go. He just, you know, was like, I just have to be honest, and like I need to, you know, who do I see in my future? Okay, it's not you. So
yeah, it's just such it's a flimsy use of the word honesty. It's there's not a lot of density, substance, thought, nuance. It's just like, honesty, I don't like you, bye. It's like, what? No, Zach, no, that's not how this works.
And it's just, I just don't think honesty is just saying the truth no matter what. I think there's consideration and there's elegance to it. There is a way that you can share it with someone where there's just thought being applied to it, and Zach didn't. And that's what made this whole situation really messy.
Gosh. And I'm glad you brought up the slut-shaming piece, because I've been reflecting about this too since our last conversation. And given everything that Gabi shared at this After the Final Rose, we know that Gabi has been slut-shamed to hell by the internet too. Like, the internet has really gone in on her and kind of criticized her for wanting to have sex with Zach. And I think that there is some nuance here, because this like piece about the consent, I don't think that anyone thought that there was anything not consensual about what happened between Gabi and Zach. Some people were like, oh my gosh, Gabi was just trying to seduce him, and you know, she is like this sexual minx or whatever. They like did this weird slut-shaming thing. And I think that is separate from a different conversation that was being had, that point that at least I was bringing up in the last week, which was her initial reaction to Zach's boundary was a little bit too dismissive, which I do think, I continue to think that that's true. I continue to think that she shouldn't have responded in this way that was like, yeah, I'm going to convince him about that. Like we'll see about that. I'm going to try to flip him. Like, I still think that that's true, but I do think that a lot of people have taken that to like, the fact that she had sex with him makes her a bad person. And it's like, no, that's not true. Like, it's really not true. And it seems like the two of them both decided that they wanted to have sex. And so the fact that people are making it seem like she is like this terrible seductress, adulterous person, like, I think that's like super heinous. It makes me so mad. Like, there's nuance to the situation, and I think the nuance is getting lost in like people's just like instinct to just shame a woman for having sex. People just love shaming, especially on this show. Look, this show just has like a more conservative bent and a more conservative, I think, audience, and people are just like, oh my God, she had sex with him? Oh, she's such a heinous person. And it's like, no, it was just that initial reaction that I was reacting to. It's all in the nuance, and the nuance was fully lost here. And I'm just so mad that she got shamed for her sexuality. Like, I'm so mad about it. And it was handled so poorly by everyone. Zach, the internet, production. I'm just so mad about everything.
Yeah, Zach was definitely valorized a lot, because the internet, you know, they take a comment like that and then they run off with it about everything that Gabi, like how they made her out to be. And she didn't even intend for that to be like a public conversation. This was meant to be very muted. It was meant to be me and Zach just cuddled. We had a great time. That was it. But now that the truth is out, like all of it is kind of being taken out of context. It's being blown out of proportion. That comment that she made, that was made dismissively, I think that the reason why I'm not like going in on it is because I think she just said it as a joke. It wasn't like she was actually dishonoring that. And you know what I mean? But then what happened was because production just had that one sentence, and then everything happened, and then he had the regret. Exactly. But I think that comment that she made, because she's jokey, she's just like saying stuff like, oh, we'll see about that. But she's not like, we'll see about that. You know what I mean? That's why I didn't take that comment so seriously, or I didn't think that she was disrespecting his boundary, because I just don't think that that's what she meant.
Yeah, it's so hard to say. I think the thing that's like really frustrating is it's like at the end of the day, Gabi and Zach having sex was not a bad thing. It was never a bad thing. And people have made it out to be a bad thing. Zach made it out to be a bad thing. Zach turned it into a bad thing. But the truth is, it was perfectly fine for them to have sex. It was perfectly fine for them to want to explore that. There wasn't even any need for them to explain themselves, explain why it happened. It's like, if they wanted to have sex, they wanted to have sex. And it is really frustrating that Gabi has now become like, is like being pilloried for it and made out to be, like she said, like she got this scarlet letter on her. Like people are really coming at her for her decision or her desire to do that. And it's kind of Zach's fault. Zach turned what should have been a normal, typical part of exploring a relationship into a mistake. He turned it into that. And it, to your point, it had nothing to actually do with him wanting to have sex with Gabi. It had everything to do with him not wanting to like ruin things with Kaity. But he isn't thinking about the way that his words and his decisions were impacting each of the women. He was not thinking about how these decisions were going to impact Gabi. He was only thinking about his future wife, which was Kaity. And so that was the only person he was thinking about. And I'm very frustrated with the fact that he applied this almost this like label of immorality around the act of sex. He kind of turned the act of sex into something that is, I don't know, like inherently shameful or inherently something that, you know, needs to be tiptoed around or tried, that we all have to try to, like, I don't know. He turned sex into this negative thing, and then he saddled Gabi with it and ran off. And he has tried to distance himself from that act. And I'm just so frustrated about it because people should be celebrated for their choices, their choice to have sex or to not have sex. People should be celebrated for their ability, their agency, their ability to honor their own values around sex. And Gabi and Zach did actually, in that moment, honor their own values around sex when they chose to have sex. And that should be something that, you know, is to be celebrated. And instead it's getting kind of hit with all of this stigma and all of this like negativity, and it's read in this negative way. It's seen as something to be shameful. And it's Zach who did that. Zach kind of, it's like he tried to like change what his true values around sex were to fit a narrative that would benefit his story with Kaity. And it was at Gabi's expense. And like Gabi became a narrative, he entered a narrative about sex into the mainstream conversation that implicitly connected sex to something bad and sex, something immoral. Having sex in this context was something that you should be ashamed of. He made that implicit connection, and he allowed the like internet to run away with it and to like take down Gabi over her decision or her desire to want sex. He kind of like, it's like he like set up, he like laid the groundwork for people to just trash Gabi, and he did nothing to protect her from that. And I'm just so frustrated about it.
The dynamic that Zach had implicitly put out was that sex is only special if you do it with the right person. When it's in these special, perfect, fairy tale conditions, and anything else is considered immoral, regretful, a mistake, you know, because he was so wrecked about it. And a lot of it was because he had chosen Kaity. He knew that Kaity was the one that he wanted to be with, and he knew that Kaity would be hurt, that he had created this band, and then he was intimate with someone that he wasn't going to propose to on the proposal stage. So because of that, like he like kind of cast everybody into these roles. Like he's the conflicted, straightforward, honest lead. Kaity is this protected, you know, angel that just is, you know, who has to be sheltered from all of this stuff. And Gabi is this immoral wrench that is doing these things to Zach and is kind of like mucking up their love story. And it's not like he did it intentionally, but it's the way that he saw Zach with everybody, and also how Zach equated sex with Kaity, which is Kaity is special. Kaity is going to be my fiance, so that means sex with anybody else is considered bad, versus what it could have been, which was like a beautiful, fun exploration into intimacy. That's really painful. The dynamic that he was putting into it, and like the roles that he was kind of putting everyone in, or from a macro perspective that production had put everybody in. Because of Zach's season, they were so pushing hard for him being this like perfect bachelor. But the love story that he's creating is outdated. It doesn't make sense in 2023. It's not contemporary at all. It's not honest. It's not straightforward. And they totally missed the mark on that.
Yeah, really well said.
So how did you all interpret the Gabi situation? How did you feel about her finally having a conversation with Zach? And what did you think about the way that she invalidated her gut instinct and how it really backfired on her? Let us know in the comments down below. Let's keep the conversation going.
I'm going to be so curious to hear what everyone thinks about the Gabi and Zach, like, sex conversation, too. I'm curious, like, how people interpreted this, because it was so... I feel like we learned so much new stuff there, like, at the end, during that after the final rose, and it really changes how, we're viewing this situation.
So we make it to the last part of the episode, which is theoretically the happy ending that the show has been having us wait for the entire season. Kaity and Zach, they have a very, a perfect happy couple edit, I would say. She, meets his family, it goes well, she has doubts, but it's nothing too big. He proposes to her, she says yes, they seem happy. I'm happy for them. I think they're actually a really good couple. The fact that they live in Texas, the fact that they just seem like they really get along, it's all great. I hope the best for them. They said that he was planning on moving to be closer to her this summer. They want a wedding in 2025, so they're actively making strides to make the relationship concrete and move it along. It's just hard because all I could think about was Ariel, all I could think about was Gabi and these conversations that had happened prior to this. Yeah. So I didn't feel totally lit up about the fact that he had proposed to Kaity. It just felt kind of like a deflating, okay, well, this is what you were looking for, but at what cost? It's like he stepped over, it's like their relationship was built on all of these broken hearts.
Yeah.
And the broken hearts would have been there theoretically because that's a part of dating. It's just the fact that he had done it so poorly that it was all I could notice in his interaction of Kaity. Yeah. I'm happy for them. I think they're great. He got what he wanted, I guess. That's all I can really say about it.
Yeah, I agree. It was so hard to watch this scene because I was just still so upset about the Gabi thing, and I was just so upset by everything that had happened that it was kind of hard. It's like you said, it's like, to what cost? I'm happy for him, but you really trampled Gabi in this process, and it's not just, I'm sad that you didn't pick me. It's like he really, I think, devastated her in the way that he went about this. And I think that it's hard for me to it makes it hard for me to be happy for him. I do think, to your point, Kaity and Zach seem like a very good couple. I think they're really on the same kind of wavelength, and I think that I can imagine them really getting along well. Zach is a very I just want to have fun all the time kind of guy, and Kaity is the kind of girl who just wants to do what her partner wants so that he doesn't leave. And so I think she'll just match that energy, and so I think that will work for them. Sorry, that was a really dark way to put it, but
but that's kind of how I saw it too, because I am genuinely very happy for them. It just feels weird because the tone of the episode was just so, it was ripe of all of these very painful, hurtful emotions, and then you see this happy ending and it's okay, but at what cost? Yeah. What price did you pay for that?
Right. And honestly, Zach and Kaity did have a really front runner edit throughout the episode leading up to the proposal. But what I will say is Kaity still showed a lot of the same kind of insecurities or wounds that still scared me from throughout the season. She kept talking about the fact that I'm being very cautious because of all the men who have left my life. I can't imagine another guy leaving me. If another guy leaves me, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle that. She kept saying all of that stuff. And so I was Kaity came out okay, but what if Zach had picked Gabi? Would Kaity have been just as much of a total devastated mess? Probably. And it's because she got the happy ending, but that doesn't fix the fact that she has all of these wounds that don't seem to have been healed, and like the husband and the shiny ring are not going to erase the fact that she has these abandonment issues that have not been addressed. And you could just hear it. In my opinion, I felt like I could just hear it in everything she said. Like, she kept saying stuff like, I never thought I could ever find someone so amazing. And it's like, that's such a sign of trauma. What? You don't think that you don't think that amazing people exist out there who are gonna come through for you, who are worthy of trust and who are going to keep your trust? It's like she is just keeps showing so many signs of, you know, trust issues, abandonment issues, trauma. Like, she keeps showing all of this, and all of that is still gonna be at play in her relationship with Zach. Right now they're in a good stage, but I just keep wondering, like, what's going to happen when things are like tougher? Are they going to be able to deal with all of this? Is she ever going to recognize and work on healing those parts of herself? Does she know that if things don't work out with Zach, literally it's going to be fine? It doesn't matter if another man walks out of her life, she will be okay, because she is very much deserving and worthy of love regardless of whether or not this man picked her. Does she know that? I don't feel like she knows that. And does she know that actually there are a million people on this planet, and so many people who she could possibly have a healthy and happy relationship? There are so many men out there that will be willing to care for her in the way that she deserves, and Zach is not the only one. He's not the unicorn guy that will take care of her. Does she know that? I don't think she does. I think she thinks that she has found this one special relationship and is the only guy who will ever, it feels unhealthy. Like, the way that she is seeing this relationship because of all of her wounds. I don't know. I'm a little bit, concerned about them. I mean, hopefully I'm overpicking at it and it's actually going to be fine and they're going to have a healthy, happy relationship. But to me, I'm just like, I'm seeing all these red flags about the relationship and the dynamic that they have.
And it's like, for me to look for the silver lining in it, it's the fact that I can see that Zach, when he commits to someone, he does put in the work. He is trying his best. He's just young, and he doesn't really know a lot about the best way to do a lot of these things, right? And Kaity is so delicate, just like we all are. We've all been really hurt in relationships. Yeah, we've all been, very hurt in relationships. And hers, I hope Zach can appropriately take care of. It seems like they're on the right track to have a very classic love story, like the love stories that he's hoping to emulate of Sean Lowe and all of these other leads. But yeah, you're right. There are some red flags, and Kaity, the way that she speaks about her situation does speak to a lot of trauma, and it speaks to a lot of abandonment. And I hope that they're able to move past that, because this show itself has not historically had a great track record of churning out happy love stories that actually go the distance. And it's not like you have to last forever for it to be good, but that's what they're selling you. It's like, all of this makes sense. All of the hurt, all of these heartbreak, all of these past girl stories, it makes sense because it's Kaity and Zach at the end. It just kind of felt like, they just kind of got there in the end, and it wasn't because of the strength of their love story, but just because of the sheer, that's just how they navigated the season and the show. And now they're at the end, and maybe they'll get married. I am not banking on it personally, and it's just down to his age. He is just so young, and he just has not been handling situations the healthiest, the kindest, and the most compassionate way.
Yeah.
That speaks a lot about his maturity level, and maybe, Katie's willing to work with him on it. It just seems like he has a very long way to go in the relationship. And when you have that much growth, there's always that risk that you will outgrow the person as you're growing so rapidly into who you are. That is kind of where I see the relationship breaking apart and maybe it not working out. But we'll see. This is just us picking at it because we're analyzing the show from that context of how can he do things better. We're naturally going to be a little bit more critical, a little bit more guarded about it based on Zach's behaviors, because we're not letting it slide. And Kaity shouldn't either. Kaity should definitely be standing up for herself and telling him, these girls are my friends. The way that you treated them was not okay.
Yeah, you're so right. That's such a good point that honestly, if I was Kaity, I'd be like, what the heck did you freaking do to Gabi? This was ridiculous. Like, you know, it's, I mean, again, it's like how people treat their exes, like, that's who they are.
Says
and
everything.
so it's like, it says a lot. And so if I was Kaity, I'd be a little bit like, what the heck happened here? This was pretty weird. Like, this wasn't so good, Zach. Like, you know what I mean? I really like what you said about, like, they just ended up here not because they have this super special magical relationship. They were destined to be together. They just were the best relationship of maybe the girls here. But, like, I don't think that means that they're, like, I don't know that we've seen indications that they are, like, such a good soulmate connection or whatever. And honestly, like, what he told Gabi, he was like, I'm so being pulled in two directions. I'm feeling love for two women. Like, I am, like, he seemed pretty, like, he was really struggling with that decision, right? He seemed, like, very unsure. He was like, this is the first time in my life where I haven't felt decisive, right? We heard him, like, really going through it, trying to figure out which girl he wanted to propose to. So I don't know that Kaity is this, like, magical connection. In fact, I really appreciated that Zach actually had as much trouble as he did choosing between Kaity and Gabi, or at least he told us that he was having trouble. I actually appreciated seeing that because, honestly, like, when you really think about it, this process and the fact that people can have these strong feelings for more than one person, it just really so beautifully lays out the fallacy of soulmate theory. The idea that I have one person on the planet who I could possibly be with and who would make me happy and who, you know, is like the perfect person for me to be with. I actually appreciated that this season, and at least the way he seemed to be talking about his decision-making process between Gabi and Kaity, it did seem like he was pretty distraught and actually did have pretty strong feelings for both of them. And the truth is, I think he could have been happy with either of those women. I think that some people could look at this scene of his, like, confusion between the two, choosing between the two women, and think that maybe, oh, well, if he can't choose between them, then he must not love either of them enough. Or, you know, the final woman will be so upset to see him having so much trouble choosing between the two of them. And I actually don't even think that that's true, because it's not that the love that he has for either of them isn't good enough. It's just that, you know, the truth is that the heart has capacity for so much love, and there are so many people out there that we could be fully compatible with and live out a wonderful life with. And I really think that for Zach, he just seems to be the kind of guy that could be compatible with a lot of people. I think he could be very compatible with Kaity. I think he could be very compatible with Gabi. I also think he could be very compatible with Kat, Jess, so many of the girls that we've seen, and so many other women out there in the world, I'm sure. That's also the truth of life. Like, all of us, like, can be compatible with so many people. So, like, the beauty of, you know, having someone in the end, picking someone that you want to spend your life with in the end, the beauty isn't in, I found you, like, you're the one person, you're my soulmate, you're the one person I could possibly be with. The beauty is in, I choose you. Like, even though I know I could be happy, I know I could be happy with so many other people. I know I could have been happy with the other girl. I know I could have a great life with other people. And yet I choose you. You are the one I want. It's not because you're the only one for me. It's not because you're my soulmate. It's because I decided that I want to do this with you. And I think that is beautiful. I think there's so much beauty in having that honest assessment of the fact that it's not that there's just one person and I just have to find you. It's just you are the one that I am choosing. It's not like Kaity is special in some way or that Kaity and Zach's relationship is special in some way. It's one of many people that I think he could have been perfectly satisfied with. So,
and that's where I have the most issue with his entire season, is the fact that all of these connections, you know, it is different, distinctly unique with each person.
Right.
But at the core of it, what the dynamic is I am a person that is seeking connection and love, and you are a person seeking connection and love. You deserve to be treated well, even if we break up, no matter what at the end. That wasn't the case. He elevated one connection above the rest. It's like Kaity is more special than everybody else, and that's not true. Even with my partner, who I love so much, it doesn't make him more special than any other person out there. It just makes him my person.
Yeah.
It makes, like, maybe I'll be more considerate towards him, but it's not like I diminish, degrade, and forget everybody else because I'm just looking at this one connection. That's not the case at all. He makes me a better person. He makes me more empowered to be a better person to all of these other connections in my life. That's what a good relationship is. How he kind of made it seem was that it was so sparkly between him and Kaity that everybody else was just like, you know, they were just
not
like
important.
Exactly, roadkill kind of on the way to that happy ending almost. Like these relationships are just what it is. They're not special, so they don't deserve to be given the special treatment to that one person. I don't agree with that at all. And that is what causes a lot of like hurt in dating. Zach had an opportunity to be a very contemporary, cool, modern model of what it could be like to date in a totally different way. Like as you're looking for love, he didn't do it because of his age, because of all of these things, and because of, like, we've seen it from the very jump when he had conflict with Rachel. The first thing he did was break up with her before she could break up with him. He, like, smeared her name on TV. He was somehow, like, heralded as this, like, honest, straightforward guy looking for love desperately. And then that model, that cutthroat nature of him doing that, he carried into his entire season. And he shielded the one person who... I don't know, like, I just don't think that because Kaity is his person, that means that she gets treated better than everybody else.
Yeah.
I think that it should be pretty level. Like, of course she is going to be different, but that doesn't mean that, like, no one else gets what Kaity has. Kaity is the only one that gets, like, the best Zach.
Right.
I feel like he should be the best Zach to everybody.
Right. I think you're so right. And it's just sad. I mean, that's why Gabi ended leaving this so devastated. And not just Gabi, other girls too. Kat, Jess. So many people left this in a real state of devastation. It's because of his... the way that he approached this, right? This approach of it's only the final person whose feelings matter and not the feelings of everyone who is going to be impacted by my decisions. I don't think he did enough thinking about that.
Yeah. And our theory that we've kind of been putting forth this entire season, it sucks to be proven right.
It does.
It sucks. We didn't want that to be true. We were just kind of noticing some things, bringing up some ideas about why he might be behaving the way that he does. And to have it be so validated by the hurt of these women and how they were just so apparently just kind of like in shock by his behavior towards them and how much he like really didn't tell them a lot about the things that were happening behind the scenes. That sucks. That's not cool to see. We don't want him to hurt people in like service of him being and finding this like great love story. I guess I'm happy that he ended up with Kaity, but yeah, I don't know.
I agree. I completely agree. I really hope that we would see a turnaround from Zach, and we never did. I think our theory about Zach really panned out. He just avoids conflict, really cannot stand negative emotions, really has very low tolerance for conflict and negative emotions.
Super low.
Such a low tolerance, and he thinks that he can avoid those conversations, those moments. He thinks that he can like avoid them, and that, you know, if I avoid them, they'll just go away and I won't have to deal with it. And he's wrong, right? And we can see how that has impacted every decision that he's made has been impacted by that way of seeing things and that mentality. There was even an element of it, honestly, that felt a little bit almost like dehumanizing. Like, it goes back to what Ariel said about like taking away these women's agency and like their ability to like make their own choices. It was like, I just feel like Zach just like skirted over really truly thinking about and getting to know what each of these girls needed and wanted. It's like he just made these decisions based on assumptions about them. Even like when he was breaking up with Gabi, the fact that he kept talking, kept trying to like tell her his like little speech that he had prepared about like, you know, why he was dumping her or how much he'll never forget her. He kept trying to say that even after she was like, I don't want to hear it. It's like he is not actually aware of his actions and their impact on other people. He's just thinking about how it impacts him, how it makes him feel. And it's like that combination of focusing on his own lived experience and avoiding conflict and negative feelings, like those things together result in so much just like not only not tending to girls' feelings, but also actually putting them in situations where they can really get hurt. And I feel like that's what he did. Like, a lot of these girls got really, really hurt along the path to getting to Kaity. And I don't know, it's like, it makes it a little hard to root for her. I mean, Kaity, I think, deserves the world. I think Kaity is wonderful, and I want her to be happy. And if she's happy with Zach, I'm happy for her. But the truth is, I'm also skeptical about Zach and Katie's relationship, so it's hard for me to even be, like, this is, let's see, hopefully we're wrong, and Zach and Kaity are the next Ari and Lauren or whoever. Like, I want to be wrong. I want them to be happy. Like, I always want these people to be happy, so hopefully they are able to work through the things that we're noticing and are able to just make it work.
So well said, and that basically sums up our thoughts about Zach and how his season went and these love stories that we've been analyzing and thinking about. Yeah, like I genuinely hope it works out.
Okay, so now that Zach's season is over, we're so excited that all of you are here and the Here to Find Love family is growing. It's so exciting to see all of your comments down below. We love interacting with y'all and having these conversations. We will, of course, be covering charity season that starts June 26th. We'll be covering BIP whenever it happens, sometime after that. But in the interim, we will still be going strong. We're really excited to start covering other types of media. Specifically, we're going to get into a little series where we're going to do some analysis of like classic romance movies, romantic rom-coms, like that kind of thing. We're going to get into a little bit of a cute, cozy, like kind of like a movie.
Like a hangout. Just come hang out with us and, vibe. Like, we're just going to be talking about these things that really matter about love and relationships, and really being critical about the way that these love stories are being presented in media, because it is important. Even though it feels very passive to watch these movies, it's affecting the way that we might be moving in the world or how we might expect relationships and love to be. We want it to be healthy. That's what we're all about. We want everybody to find love, and we want people to do it in a really fun, communicative, honest, and thoughtful way that makes everybody feel good. We'll talk to you guys about it, so join us for our cozy movie series.
Oh, I can't wait. If you guys have any movies, by the way, or TV shows that you guys want us to talk about, analyze, break down, please leave some comments down below.
Us.
And we are definitely open to recommendations now, because we are going into a fun new chapter of Here to Find Love.
We can't wait. We have The Notebook next week, which would be super fun for all of the Notebook fans out there. We really go into it.
Oh my God. Wait, I didn't know we were going to preview this, but oh my God. Yeah, we had a really interesting, let's just say we had such an interesting conversation about The Notebook. I was like fascinated because, listen, it's a classic movie. We all have seen it probably like a million times, but like me and Julie rewatched it with like a more kind of critical relationship psychology type of eye, and wow, I was like, oh boy, we got a lot to say. We got a lot to break down there.
Join us next week.
It's gonna be good. Okay, and make sure you leave some comments down below about what you thought about the end of Zach's season and the season finale. What did you think of Zach and Katie's relationship? What did you think about the Zach and Gabi breakup? Let's keep the conversation going down below, and we will see you all next week for more. Bye.
Bye.